on the inside. And am I wrong there? Okay. So it was getting in disrepair, so they closed it. And then when they did do an audit, they found out that one of the employees had embezzled more than $200,000 in that 5-year period. So the FBI came in, and the FBI kept it closed. And after a building is closed for a year, it has to be brought up to code. So in order to bring it up to code, there's some extensive renovation that has to be done. Now that's going to be done, and it's going to be done on our backs. We're putting up, as taxpayers, the $1.5 million to renovate the inside of this building. So that, not only is this our building, but that should give us that much more say-so about what is done in the building. Well, Destination Cleveland County came to the commissioners, and they wanted to do the Earl Scruggs Center there. Let me back up and tell you how the Earl Scruggs Center began to begin with. Jim Allen had an idea. If you look on the records, you'll see that Jim Allen is still listed as the chief agent for that corporation, which was the Historical Museum. He wanted to give the museum a shot in the arm. So he had an idea, why did we not just do a room or a section of the museum and honor our musical heritage? So he and a group approached the Don Gibson family and the Earl Scruggs family about the possibility of doing this. It was supposed to encompass some other singers, too. Somewhere down the line, it got to the point that Don Gibson was going to have to go to another building because the Scruggs family wanted the Scruggs to be there and Don Gibson to be somewhere else. So this is where Destination Cleveland County began, because Jim Allen pulled out. Said we can't do this just for one. So then Destination Cleveland County picked up the ball, and it was, at that time, if you look back at the newspaper, it was called the Southern Heritage Museum. And they were taking a look at moving our artifacts to a different building and having it solely for this. Somewhere down the line, it got to be the Earl Scruggs Center. And how they got into it being the Earl Scruggs Center was one of their consultants told them that the name museum does not bring people in, that you need a hook. So the Earl Scruggs name would be the hook that would get people over here to come to the museum. Well, they approached the county commissioners, and they proposed doing this Earl Scruggs Museum for the courthouse. And the commissioners at that point should have opened it up where everybody else in the county would have had an opportunity to present whatever they wanted to do for the museum, or to say that they didn't want anything else other than the Historical Museum to be there. But the commissioners did step forward and let the public know that this building might be available. And immediately, when Destination Cleveland County went to them and proposed this Earl Scruggs Center, Destination Cleveland County began advertising and marketing that it was going to be held in the courthouse. They have not been given permission to do this, even to this day. Now, I talked to Mary Acker about this last summer. She said she had a problem with some of the wording. And I said, you know, you need to have them take this off until it is actually given to them. Now, if I say that we have an accountability problem with our commissioners and our elected officials, we have a credibility problem with Destination Cleveland County. If these people are going to be the leaders, and again I remind you that they are self-appointed leaders. They are not empowered by the people. We didn't elect them, and we didn't hire them. And the real danger with this type of leadership is that you can't fire them and you can't vote them out of office. So they have gone to the commissioners and they have asked for this building, and immediately they've marketed it like it's theirs. And that squelched anybody else going and looking to do something there. And so I call that false advertising. I look at that as lack of credibility. The second thing they did is when this fell apart at the courthouse, when the Earl Scruggs camp decided that Don Gibson camp could not be in there, in the same building, the county commissioner should have stepped in right then. They should have stepped in and said, wait a minute, you know, this is either going to be like this or it's not going to be done. They did. And Destination Cleveland County, that's when the power shifted from them to the Earl Scruggs account. And so I look at that as a credibility problem. Then the second thing is they had to go sign the building for Don Gibson. And when they went to sign the building, they went to the Rogers Theater. And I was saying to Andrew Hopper that when they went to the Rogers Theater, Uptown Shelby Association owned the building at this time, not Bob Rogers. He had sold it to Uptown Shelby Association. And Uptown Shelby Association wanted to buy it. And he had even gone, Bobby Rogers had even gone to John Edwards and got him to get a grant so that the Uptown Shelby Association could afford to buy it. He reduced the price, and at the same setting, he wrote a check for $35,000 to Uptown Shelby Association to help to renovate it. And so when Destination Cleveland County went to the Rogers Theater to look at that as a venue for the Don Gibson Theater, there is a clause in there. They were all aware of it, they read this, that this Rogers Theater would always retain the name Rogers Theater. When they put up that sign last December, it said Don Gibson Theater, and it did not say Rogers Theater anywhere, and Bobby Rogers questioned it, then that is when they picked up their toys and went home. And so, but this is not what they will say. They will tell you that it wasn't big enough or all these other things. I look at that as a credibility problem. And they say that they do have a PR problem. Well, that is the point where we are now. So then they went to the State Theater, the old Flex, and got the city of Shelby to allow them to use the Flex Theater. Now, the city had bought this Flex Theater so they would have a place for the police department to expand. And now, I don't know what the police department will do when the expansion comes. But Rick Howell, the city manager, negotiated for the city with Destination Cleveland County for the use of that building. And this was what they negotiated. $1 a year for the next 4 years, and then they could buy it for tax value. Tax value is $207,137. And they gave them an agreement that if they can raise $500,000, that the city would match it with another $500,000. They will give it to them. So in essence, when they give them that $500,000, when they say, I've got my $500,000, then the city's going to hand them $500,000, and then they're going to hand them $200,000 back and say, here's to the building, thank you for the $300,000. Now, it clarifies something in their favor, because you can look at this, as I did to begin with, and thought, now wait a minute, how can they let our firemen go lose their job, and then they've got $500,000 to give to Destination Cleveland County. This comes out of motel-hotel tax, and motel-hotel tax has to be used for tourism. And we take in about $100,000 a year. This next year we'll probably take in more because of the American Legion. But this is 5 years worth of motel-hotel tax. One thing they could have done is they could have paid off the carousel mortgage, and they would save the interest on that loan, and they could have used that interest money to keep the firemen working. So, you know, that's a side that they could have done. But anyway, this is where they are on that Don Gibson Theater. Now, back to the courthouse. When they approached them about having this as the Earl Scruggs Center, and the commissioner said nothing. They have let Destination Cleveland County come periodically and give them updates. And about a year ago, I started looking into this. And in spring, I started talking to Brown about, I say, this is the scuttlebutt, you refute it. Let me tell you what's been said. You know, you all need to get it out to the public. I started with the commissioners too. In October, I approached the commissioners at a meeting, and I told them that they needed to answer some questions. I gave them a list of 8 questions. I gave each one of them a copy. That if they would answer these questions in a public forum, that we would come to better terms, the citizens of Cleveland County and Destination Cleveland County. To my knowledge, to this day, they haven't answered them. But it was things like, is there an agreement with Destination Cleveland County and Cleveland County? And if this opens up, who gets the money? Where does the money come from? To renovate it, this type of thing. And so still, there's no answer to that. And so now, they approached them in November 20th is Commissioners' meeting, and they asked for the use of the courthouse for the Earl Scruggs Center. And they came in with no documents, and I think the commissioners were ready to give them a carte blanche, because Eddie Holbrook said, I've heard enough, and I'm ready to accept the proposal. And Mary Acker goes, who's backing this? And Johnny Hutchins goes, wait a minute, what are we voting on? He said to Brownie, if you were prepared, you would have a document in here with you to sign. I'm not voting on anything until I see what we're voting on. And he said, I'm for Heritage 150%, but I want to see some paperwork, what you're going to do to fill this, and so forth. So they left it that David Deere and the county manager and Bob Yelton, the county attorney, would negotiate a consensual lease agreement for them to look at for the use of the building. They had to be back by January 15th with this, and they still have not come back with it. I don't know what's holding it up. I don't know if it's the lawyer or what, but something is holding up getting those papers signed. Now, this is where I have a problem with the accountability of our government officials. Because in the first place, I just told you, they didn't come forward and let everybody know that this building was available to do anything with. And in the second place, when I started looking at their corporate papers, I saw that on their board of directors, our city manager, Rick Howell, is an ex officio voting member, and also our county manager is an ex officio voting member. There's some chairs back there in the room. Would one of you men help?
There's some up here too.
Okay, there's more here.
Couple up here.
But our city manager and our county manager are sitting on their board, negotiating our money, our taxpayers' money, and our building. And I spoke at the county commissioners meeting 2 weeks ago, and I told them then, I said, you can't sit on both sides of the fence. Now, Destination Cleveland County came out with a beautiful brochure recently, and they sent it to the people that they wanted to get the money from, to get the endorsement. This is the brochure that they sent out. And there's a DVD in here, and if anybody would like to take a look at this, or if you'd like a copy, if you'll let me know, I'll make you one. But when I started looking at their brochure, I said, well, I'll be darned. There is 3 of our county commissioners that sat on their task force last year that planned their strategic planning task force for the next 5 years. They sat on the board that planned it. Now, folks, if they sit on the board of planning, they're not going to vote against it. So I'm thinking, silly me, when I told Brownie Plaster last summer that I thought she would have a hard sell getting our courthouse, and she said, we'll see. I thought she had to sell the team on the idea. I wasn't thinking about all she had to do was get 3 commissioners. And here was the 3 commissioners that is in here that sat on their board. Who are they? Eddie Holbrook and Joe Bob and Mary Acker. And on this 8-minute DVD, Mary Acker and Joe Bob endorsed it. And Eddie Holbrook also, on testimony, endorses it for the community college.